To the dismay of many AAA studios, Baldur's Gate 3 is well on its way, and the excitement around the game is growing day by day, hour by hour, but for all intents and purposes, that shouldn't be happening because, well, this is a relatively niche genre. This is a CRPG. This isn't a first-person shooter. This isn't an ARPG. It's not a Diablo IV or Call of Duty or anything like that. However, there's a lot of eyes on this game. There's a lot of excitement that's behind it, and realizing that there's a lot of new eyes that are on the game and on the genre, I felt like this was a really good opportunity to talk to you guys about why everybody's so excited about the game and where a lot of this excitement is coming from, because I feel there's a lot of unique perspectives that we're really not paying attention to that, well, are all coalescing and colliding to make this perfect and harmonious moment that is Baldur's Gate 3. Now, before we dive in, I just want to say something. There's been a lot of traffic, a lot of new eyes to my channel over the last month or two, and I would like to properly introduce myself. My name is Ian from Legendary Drops. I work in the construction industry, and I make videos as a hobby. I am not a games journalist. I am not a developer of any sort. I mean, I did go to college once for game development and then dropped out and then went to school for business instead, and now I have a marketing degree, and I don't even work in marketing. So there's that. But I'm not a build guy. I don't like making meta videos or anything like that just because, well, that's just not something that I myself am really into. I don't like to meta myself out of fun. Now, that's just my personal take. I actually do enjoy watching people that make videos like that because it's really cool and interesting to see the perspective from people that really enjoy diving into the systems of these games that we love so much. But I like talking about the community. I like talking about the news. I like talking about how these games are made, and I like to talk about the people that make these games. And Larian Studios is one of those studios that makes games that players love because they themselves are the players that love to play those games. I hope that makes sense. One of the reasons we can attribute as a factor for the rise in popularity of Baldur's Gate 3 is the recent Twitter war involving indie and AAA studios, many calling Baldur's Gate 3 an anomaly and not wanting customers to compare their games to Baldur's Gate 3. And while I'm not going to rehash that entire discussion, I will say that is some of the best marketing Larian could have ever asked for, because as a whole, gamers are relatively divorced from AAA groupthink. We don't care about their effort, their budgets, or their intentions. All we care about is the end product. And hearing how these developers were threatened by Baldur's Gate 3 only serves as the best pre-review for any wanting consumer to ask for. Now, while this did serve as a great way for the game to go viral, I think it's important to understand that Baldur's Gate 3's popularity was something that was foreshadowed by a number of other factors well before this exchange. Now, to better understand the phenomena that is Baldur's Gate 3, I think it's important that we take a step back, well, as far as we can step back, to the formation of Larian Studios. Larian Studios is a Belgian video game development company that was founded in 1996 by Sven Vink. The studio's earliest years were spent, well, creating very small-scale games, but it gained significant recognition with the release of Divine Divinity in 2002, which showcased the studio's potential for immersive RPG experiences. Over the years, Larian Studios honed its craft, continuing to develop RPGs with a focus on player choice and engaging storytelling. The success of Divinity Original Sin in 2014 and its sequel, Divinity Original Sin 2 in 2017, further solidified the studio's reputation as a major player in the RPG genre. Now, the story here isn't that simple. It wasn't just we made a couple of games and then all of a sudden we made a good one, it got popular, and now we make great games, and that's just the story, case closed. No. Their road, Larian's road to success, was incredibly difficult, and it was one that was paved by creatives, and that's where things get, well, different with them in regards to most companies that are out there because they are creative-led, not business-led. Looking back on an article from 2015 from PC Gamer, how Divinity Original Sin almost bankrupted Larian Studios, the article reads, Larian Studios has been trying to make Divinity Original Sin in one form or another since 1997. Founder Sven Vink gave a great postmortem on the development of one of our favorite games of 2014, focusing more on the business side of game development than the creative side, or, more specifically, how business and creative clash and overlap. To make their dream RPG in Divinity Original Sin, Larian went independent, borrowed money from the bank, got outside investors, raised nearly $1 million on Kickstarter, sacrificed Divinity Dragon Commander, and still nearly ran out of funding. If Original Sin hadn't been a serious success, that could have been the end of Larian Studios. Now, the reason why this story is significant is because if it wasn't for their gamble with Divinity and Divinity Original Sin 2, well, Larian Studios wouldn't have Baldur's Gate. I mean, I did notice that some of the developers that were complaining had complained that, you know, they had this awesome IP in Baldur's Gate and Wizards of the Coast and all of that. However, what they have to realize is that, well, Larian worked for that. That wasn't something that was just given to them. See, after the release of Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, which were done by BioWare, that IP went up into the air, and there was a ton of different developers that were trying to vie for ownership of that IP. However, none of them got it. One of those studios that was also trying to vie for it was Larian Studios. However, they hadn't proven themselves yet to be competent enough to be able to make a Baldur's Gate game. It wasn't until the success of Divinity Original Sin, and then the marketing had came out for Divinity Original Sin 2, that Wizards of the Coast finally said, hey, do you guys want to make this game? See, that says a lot. It isn't something as easy as something being handed to somebody. No, this is blood, sweat, and tears of 30 plus developers that had worked on Divinity Original Sin and Divinity Original Sin 2. This wasn't some massive company that just got a favor. No, these are people that worked hard and passionately, and honestly were people that didn't really have a lot of knack for the business side. They went way over their budget. They had to borrow. They were in debt. They were in like a couple $1 million debt. This is the kind of thing that you can see when an IP means a lot to a company, because they genuinely love that story. And that's the story that they want to tell to their customers. This company worked so hard to make sure that their games were successful because they had a story to tell. They had an experience to give. This is one of the reasons why people are so excited for Baldur's Gate 3. It's not just because it's Wizards of the Coast property. It's not because it's being made by a AAA company. No, it's because it's being made by people that worked very hard to have the opportunity to be able to make this game and give it to us. Now, I'm not downplaying the importance of the Wizards of the Coast IP. In fact, it's one of the most contributing factors to the excitement and popularity behind Baldur's Gate 3. This is something that's been brewing for the last few years, ever since the pandemic lockdowns in 2020, where D&D experienced its biggest year yet in its 47-year history. Wizards of the Coast stated that though they can't give exact numbers, they estimate they have over 50 million players to date, with 60% of that player base landing between the ages of 20 and 34, which is a key gaming demographic. Now, this is something I guarantee I'm going to get comments on, because I guarantee some of you guys also are some of the people that got hooked in because of the lockdowns. See, there was so much content being generated during the lockdown, specifically with Dungeons & Dragons. Looking at YouTube channels or Twitch streams. Heck, look at the growth of Critical Role. They have their own TV show on Amazon now. Not to mention, there was the movie that we had earlier this year. I think that was like back in March, Honor Amongst Thieves. I thought it was hilarious. I enjoyed it. Dungeons & Dragons has been explosive over the last couple of years, and this is something that's only serving as a boon to Baldur's Gate 3 and Larian by extension. Everybody has more interest in Baldur's Gate. They have more interest in Dungeons & Dragons and fantasy games in general, and because of that, the game is seeing a lot more interest than the game probably normally would any other time. And I think it's a great thing, because I really enjoy playing Dungeons & Dragons. It's been a great time playing with friends and making friends and meeting people, and whether it's been online or in person, it's always a really awesome community building experience. And now we get to do that with a game. We get to just experience more of that. And players are drawn to those kind of things. And when we're talking about community building experiences, Larian Studios is, well, the king of them all. Which brings me to the leading factor, if not the most important factor, and the one that's going to lead them to success in the future and then on, and probably for another decade, just like we had with Divinity Original Sin. Larian Studios' exceptional approach to community building through early access and their engaging panels from hell has really set them apart as a developer that values the player's input and feedback. By opening the doors to early access for Baldur's Gate 3, they've allowed fans to be a part of the development journey from the very beginning. This not only created a sense of ownership and excitement, but it also fostered this genuine partnership between the studio and the community. Larian Studios actively listened to the players' suggestions, addressed any issues that they found pretty quickly, to be honest with you, and constantly improved the game based on real-time feedback. This transparency and collaborative effort of development process not only resulted in a really polished final product that we're going to be seeing with Baldur's Gate, but it also forged this really long-lasting bond between the player base and the developer themselves. And I really need to hammer on the point that the panels from Hell, they further exemplified Larian's dedication to the community and engaging with the community. These panels from Hell provided fans with an exclusive look behind the scenes of Baldur's Gate 3, featuring developers discussing upcoming features, answering questions, and sharing insights about the game's design process. Through these events, Larian Studios effectively bridged the gap between developer and player, breaking down traditional barriers and creating a shared enthusiasm for the game's future. The genuine passion and excitement exhibited by the developers during these panels resonated really deeply with myself and other members of the community, which fostered this sense of camaraderie and mutual appreciation. Larian Studios committed to their community. They committed to community building. Through the process of these panels, through all of their different updates on their Steam page, not only is this leading to an exceptional game, but it's also establishing a relationship of trust, respect, and love between the studio and its players that, honestly, it's something that's probably going to endure for years and years to come. And this is something that I want to be as genuine as I possibly can be about, because I've talked about this in my very first Baldur's Gate 3 video. Baldur's Gate 3 will surprise you. Ooh. But we don't see this level of transparency from any other developer that's out there. And there's others that are trying to emulate it, and I respect them for doing so. Diablo IV is the first one that comes to mind with their campfire chats, which I think are great. However, the thing is that it's not really a community building event. It's just developers being berated by questions and downtrodden and feeling bad because that culture isn't set there the way that it is at Larian Studios, where you have these people that are genuinely having fun making the game that they're making because they're passionate and they love that game and they love that story and they love what they're doing. And that's not to say that the people working on Diablo IV aren't doing the same thing or they aren't passionate about it, but the culture's not the same. And to be honest with you, and I realize some of you guys probably haven't watched any of the campfire chats, but you know, when they had Rod Ferguson on before and he's being jovial and he's joking around, but the problem is the player base is upset with the state of the game, so they don't care about him joking around. They see it as a distraction rather than anything else. The problem with that is it necessarily wasn't just him being a distraction. It was because nobody else was really in on that conversation. None of them were all having that much fun. The rest of them were feeling rather defeated. When you watch these panels from Hell, you see the excitement, you see the love, you see the genuine, just the good feels of enjoying your job and the people that you work for and the people that you work with and the thing that you're working on. And that's infectious. It's infected us players that have played the early access version of the game. We're the ones that are sitting here making these videos, talking to you, telling you how incredible this game is, how incredible this game is going to be, and how much fun it's going to be for us all to play. Even more so, how much we want you to be a part of this community so that you yourself can experience it and then pass it on to another person, because this is what we need in gaming. We need more of this, and we don't have enough of it anymore. I hate to say it, but a lot of these AAA developers it doesn't feel to me that they really enjoy what they're doing anymore. They're not in love with the projects that they're working on. That has a lot to do with the fact that they're being whipped day by day by people above them. And you can see that in those comment sections and those threads on Twitter with those developers talking about how they don't want to be compared to Baldur's Gate 3 because the only thing that's coming out of their mouth is numbers and budgets and time constraints and things that should never be the interest of creatives that are trying to make something that players love, that players want to play. Larian Studios is that company, making a game that players want to play, making a game that they love for the players that they love. I really hope people appreciate this game for everything that it is and more, because this is an incredibly special moment in game development, in game design, and in gaming history. I said it in my first video on Baldur's Gate, If you haven't watched the panels from hell, go watch every single one of them and you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. We don't see this, and we may not see it again for a very long time. And the only thing that we can do is continue to support the companies that do love the things that they make and do love the players that they're making it for, and that aren't being controlled by these oligarchs in the offices above them, these gold holders, these loot goblins. I love Baldur's Gate. I cannot wait to share this game with you. I cannot wait to share this game with my friends. I can't wait to make it the only thing I'm probably going to stream for the next year or more. I mean, I'll probably stream some other stuff too. By the way, if you guys don't know, I stream on Twitch sometimes. You guys can follow me on Twitch down below. It's really weird streaming when you don't have people to talk to. I mean, I get a few people in there, and I appreciate you, friends, for joining me. But I'm an engagement guy. I like to talk. Give me things to talk about. Ask me questions about things. That's how I function. If I'm not talking, I just feel weird. But anyway, that's it. That's all I have. There's a lot of different reasons why Baldur's Gate 3 is this massive game that seemingly for a lot of other people popped out of nowhere, but it's something that's been building for years now. And I'm happy to have been a part of that. And I cannot wait for you to be able to experience it yourself. I feel bad for the Xbox folks that are going to have to stay waiting for a little bit longer. But I'm going to tell you right now, guys, it's 100% worth it. Larian is doing their best to make sure that they're going to bring you guys the best possible experience that you can get out of Baldur's Gate 3. They do not want to give you some 30 FPS garbage. No, they said 60 FPS, and that's even on the Series S. And that's a task. Anyway, that's all I got. See you guys later. Stay cool. Stay righteous. Stay safe, my friends. Peace.